Catastrophe Cat, and it's by Panek. Here's the first page, is Catastrophe Cat. Story and pictures by Panek. He wrote the story and did the pictures. There was an orange cat who lived with his family in a large city. Most of the time, he led a very quiet life. And you can see his family there, and they're just doing some projects. They're reading, and the kids are doing some drawing and maybe making something with some string and scissors and tape. And there's a little bird cage up here. Oops, get my right. There you go. A little bird cage up there with their little pet bird. But sometimes when he played alone, he got into a terrible mess. So you can see that Catastrophe, the cat, got up there. He climbed up on the bird cage. He let the birds out, and he found that string and was stringing it all around the living room, and just cluttering up everything. And so he jumped down, and his family saw him, and they saw all the big mess that he made, and so his family called him Catastrophe Cat. And catastrophe means some kind of a big mess, and he made a mess. So one day, Catastrophe looked out the window, and he discovered a new place to play. There was a little platform out there on ropes, and the men were using it to paint the building. So he jumped out there and started painting, and he climbed down and was having the best time, and he was using a paintbrush and painting on the building and making paw prints. But suddenly he slipped off, and the paint spilled out, and his tail got caught in the rope, and he swung out on the rope and went flying through the air. And down here you can see there's a man down on the street below who has a little cart selling food and drinks. And Catastrophe fell down onto the man's umbrella, and it made all the drinks go flying everywhere. And then he bounced off the umbrella, and he bounced onto the top of a taxi cab that was driving down the street. And so he was riding along on top of the car, and then he jumped off of the taxi cab, and the other cars were there in all the traffic, and so he ran through the cars over toward the side of the road. Very dangerous. And he ran past, and he saw a lady who was walking 10 dogs. All those dogs were barking at the kitty. And so he ran over to a garbage can, and he grabbed an umbrella and jumped way up onto a telephone wire, and there were a couple of birds up there. And oh, what a mess. He was trying to walk on that wire, and all of the dogs and birds were growling at him and chirping at him, and he was using the umbrella to kind of try to keep his balance. And what a big commotion. so he used the umbrella kind of like a parachute and jumped down and landed on the ground. Ka-flop. And then he walked over to the entrance for the subway, which is a train that goes underground. And a lady had a bag, and he saw that bag, and he climbed up into that bag because she was going to get on the subway train. And so the lady got onto the subway train, and Catastrophe was in the sack. Can you see him, his little head sticking out of the sack? And the train was about to leave the station, and a man was looking down and said, "You're not supposed to have a cat on the train." So when she got off the train, Catastrophe jumped out of the sack, and there were a bunch of people that were looking at something, and Catastrophe jumped onto a man's head to see what was going on. And then he jumped down off the man's head and down onto the ground. And then he jumped up, 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 and there was a rope that he could climb up on. Where was he going? Oh, a rope was tied to a big balloon of a bear, and he landed flop up on the top of the balloon, way up high in the sky. And see, all the people down below are having a parade. Well, that was kind of scary because he was way up in the air, and so he got ready and he saw a window opening, and so he jumped over and caught onto the windowsill of the window, and he climbed inside the window and jumped down and jumped up in the chair, and he was so tired from his adventure that he just looked like he just went to sleep right there in the chair. It had been a busy day for him. And the family came home and saw Catastrophe, and he was being nice and quiet because he was so tired, and they were so glad to see Catastrophe. And he was back home with his family. So he had an exciting day and got into all kinds of adventures. Well, that's the end of the book Catastrophe Cat.